Hello and welcome to the first edition of TVC News Investigates. I'm Ivy Kano. Do you believe in witchcraft? What do religion and science say about witches? Well, in this edition, Katie Mark investigates the ordeal of children who have been tagged witches and what happens to them.
Witchcraft is real. It's real. Spell is real.
To think that a child's torso was left in the River Thames because that boy had been sacrificed was just mind-blowing. I didn't want to think that that could possibly happen.
To stab the child is to stab the devil, not to stab the child.
How they come about to know that that child is a witch is unbearable, and it is really against God and the human understanding.
The children weren't allowed to eat, sleep or drink. They were forced to pray and take part in what was a sadistic ritual that was under the guise of deliverance.
Accused of practicing witchcraft, was beat, then drowned Christmas Day 2010 as he begged to die because of the pain they were inflicting.
In the last decade in the UK, there have been a number of high-profile child abuse and murder cases linked to a belief in spirit possession and witchcraft, which brought the issue to national attention. The abuse was severe and horrific, but police and advocacy groups say these cases barely begin to scratch the surface, and the issue of faith-based child abuse remains a hidden crime.
There's this huge sort of unreported extent of this, and indeed that children are still being accused of being witches, in some cases being sent back to parts of Africa for exorcism. What there isn't is any systematic attempt to monitor this, to find out exactly what the extent is. There's been very little research done within the communities, and it's partly, I think, because people are so sensitive about touching what is effectively a belief issue, a belief system.
Children that are accused of being possessed by evil spirits are thought to have the power to bewitch others, cause misfortune, failure, illness, and even death. The cure is to expel the spirits, sometimes by violent means, through what is known as deliverance.
Ritual murder is real. It's real. It does happen. And I don't know when it will stop.
Well, with witchcraft, there's normally the intention to harm someone else. So even an unintentional witchcraft, you might feel ill will towards someone, you might feel jealousy or envy or something like that, and that can result in witchcraft. Or, in the case of sorcery, you deliberately set out to harm someone. Whereas these other forms of killing is rather harnessing power in order to advance your own ends.
It was here in September 2001, along the River Thames in central London, that a passerby noticed an object floating on the river. On closer inspection, he found it to be a body and alerted police. Moments later, just further upstream, the mutilated body of a young boy was pulled out of the river. It had no arms, no legs, and no head.
Unable to positively identify the child, the police named him Adam. He was a young boy around 5 years old. Police called it one of the most shocking murder cases they had ever dealt with. Dr. Richard Hoskins, an expert in African religion, helped the police with the case.
The killing of a child is considered to be that's the most serious, most awful, and therefore the most empowering form of magic that you could perform. But the idea of sacrifice in general is that you spill the blood, it appeases the gods are then happy, the spirits are happy, they receive this offering of the blood, which is the life force of the animal, and they then perform on behalf of you whatever it is that you're asking, whether it's to heal somebody, whether it's to maybe bring you good luck or whatever it is, but the spilling of the blood brings that power. The killing of a child is obviously forbidden in the whole of Africa, but that doesn't mean it doesn't occasionally happen. And in the case of Adam, it happened here in London.
Forensic tests on the contents of Adam's stomach revealed he'd been fed a potion of bone, clay and gold, which indicated that he had been used as part of a protection ritual. A substance from the caliber bean was also found in his intestine. This would have acted as a paralysing agent, leaving him paralysed but conscious when his throat was cut.
He was ritually prepared. We found contents in his intestine and lower intestine that showed he'd been prepared for it, and the manner of the cut to his neck and the way he was drained of blood, held upside down and drained of blood, is just absolutely typical of the way that animals are killed and sacrificed in parts of Africa. And so I think there's no doubt that he was sacrificed, and that's another thing again.
He was the first known case of child sacrifice in the UK and the first unsolved child murder for the Metropolitan Police in more than 30 years.
I knew fairly early on it was a ritualistic killing. What I didn't sort of twig to very fast was the fact that it was a sacrifice, partly because I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that in London a child would be sacrificed. I wouldn't want to believe a child was sacrificed in Africa. And to think that a child's torso was left in the River Thames to float away, one tide away from getting washed out to sea, because that boy who'd been sacrificed was just mind-blowing. I didn't want to think that that could possibly happen.
Adam was identified by a key witness earlier this year as Patrick Haraba. His killers have never been caught. The case was significant, coming just a year after the death of Victoria Climbié, an 8-year-old from the Ivory Coast who died in London in February 2000 after a horrendous period of sustained torture and abuse. She had been beaten with hammers and bike chains, burnt with cigarettes, bound and forced to sleep in a bath, because her carers believed her to be a witch. When she was finally taken to hospital, it was too late to save her life. She was suffering from hypothermia, multiple organ failure and malnutrition. 128 separate injuries were found on her body. In the years that followed, more high-profile cases would begin to emerge. These cases put the issue of ritualised abuse and murder linked to a belief in witchcraft and spirit possession on the radar. This was something that was happening in England to the most vulnerable members of society. It is very rare to find someone who believes that violent means is necessary to heal possessed children, and this supports the view that this is only practiced by a small minority of people, but it also shows just how hidden this crime really is.
Of course, it's very possible for children to be possessed. I've seen it many times. The thing that happens is that they have the spirit in them, which causes them to do evil things. They can harm anybody, people close to them. They can even cause sickness, cause disease. That is why we must do deliverance. It's for their own good even. It's not for anybody else. It's for their own good, because they can even harm themselves.
Baba Musa is a spiritual healer who has performed deliverances on children. He did not want his face revealed, but agreed to an interview over the phone. He's practiced in London and Nigeria. He insists he has never harmed a child himself during deliverance, but claims it is sometimes necessary to do so. He says to save the child from a greater evil.
I don't believe that children should die from deliverance. The reason that it's done in the first place is to save the children. So why should you want to kill them?
Now, in England, there have been cases of children dying because their carers have tortured them to death, cutting them, starving them, apparently to deliver them from witchcraft. I mean, how can this be justified?
To starve the child is to starve the devil, not to starve the child. It's to cure the child. The cutting is to allow the devil out.
Now, I think most people would just consider that child abuse, and I think most people would be horrified that you don't outright condemn these practices.
All of these things, there's a reason why they're done. It's not just something that we made up today. It's something that's been going on, that's been done for hundreds of years in our communities. So these things all have a reason. Even if it's not understood properly here, it's understood.
People harming these children, they are the people that should be investigated. They are the people that should be interrogated, not the children, because what they see is not what other human beings see. So if you ask me, those children are innocent. They are innocent of any accusation.
Justice Amadiegwa's father was a well-renowned spiritual healer back in his village in Nigeria. Justice says this type of abuse is never acceptable.
The people that harm these children are the people who are really sick in their heads. They are mad, they are mental, they are demented and so forth. That's what I fear.
Justice now campaigns to raise awareness about ritual abuse, having himself been the victim of superstitious beliefs.
I was born a twin. Twin births are frowned at. It's an abomination. The native doctor saw another human being inside, which was my partner. And they looked at each other and said, no, this can't happen. And they killed the baby.
I was 8 years old when they started to beat me and tell me I was a witch. Everything I did was evil. It just started one day. They told me that I was the reason why everything bad was happening in the house.
Rose asked us not to use her real name or show her face. She's 24 years old now, but was abused by her carers between the ages of 8 to 10 because they believed she was possessed. Throughout the interview, she only ever referred to her abusers as they.
I was confused because I didn't know what I was doing wrong. How could I be capable of being able to cause harm to them? And I was only 8 years old. But once they decided I was a witch, I couldn't even have imagined how much they would do to me and how long it would last. I didn't know what I was doing wrong, and I kept trying to act how they wanted me to be, and I wanted to make them happy. But everything I did, nothing would make them happy. They just kept telling me that I was an evil person, I was a bad person, and I was possessed.
If you have that love, how can you condescend to animalistic way to go and harm that child?
Any behaviour considered abnormal can be a trigger to single children out as possessed.
Accusation comes when anything wrong happens, a death in the family, a miscarriage. If you tell a child that you are a witch, you have dehumanized the child. It's no longer the innocent child we think of, he's a criminal.
The children involved are often troubled children before they get accused of witchcraft, and that's one of the catalysts. So if you take it from the other perspective, a family will have a child that's perhaps slightly troubled, not getting on at school, or something is not quite right in the family, and they will then scapegoat that child, they'll accuse that child. But therefore, often the child's already, as they would see it, slightly disturbed or slightly unusual. But it's incredible the number of signs that are used to be the trigger for saying they've got witchcraft. It can be anything from bedwetting to bad dreams, loss of money, anything like that.
They started to not give me food or water for days, and then they beat me. And then if I cried, they beat me more. And then if I didn't cry, they said it was the devil, so they beat me again. So everything I did was wrong. I knew I wasn't a witch, but they kept telling me that I was, and then I said that I was because I thought they would stop beating me if I admitted to it.
When somebody, a child, does what you and I don't do, probably more intelligent than you, then you begin to say that he has extraordinary power. That extraordinary power is what distinguishes you and him. And in that respect, some ignorant idiots then will look for a way to blackmail them, call them witch, and then find a way to, because in my country they said, if you want to kill a dog, you give it a bad name. Once you give it a bad name, then you can kill that dog.
If they're possessed, will they not suffer more? And they'll make others suffer too. So is it not better for them to go through a little bit of pain so that they can be happy and they can be free, and others around them can also be free?